In order to provide the best learning environment, we expect nothing less than the highest standards of gun safety.
Fight.
Gun safety applies to everyone, the beginner and even the experienced alike. It's easy to fall victim to the "I've been around guns all my life" mentality, but that type of carelessness can result in serious injury or even death. So, let's talk about the 4 rules of gun safety. Treat all guns as if they're loaded. Finger off the trigger until ready to fire. Never point the gun at something you aren't willing to destroy. Identify your target and what is beyond. Treat all guns as if they're loaded. Just moments ago, I locked this action open and placed this firearm on the table. I'll pick this firearm up, but I'll make sure that that firearm is unloaded. Magazine well, ejection port, chamber. If you always treat the gun as if it's loaded, you're never surprised when it is. Finger off the trigger until ready to fire. Now, you've often heard that, but let's take a look at what it really means. Notice my finger is off the frame, resting just below the slide. If I look at the other side of the gun, you can't see my finger anywhere. That's what the instructors here at Boondocks will be looking for today. Let's look at some examples of when you should never have your finger inside the trigger guard. When you're loading, unloading, reloading, drawing, holstering, clearing a malfunction, or moving while not engaging a target. That's what it means to have your finger outside the trigger guard. Never point the gun at something you aren't willing to destroy. Here at Boondocks today, you'll be on a firing line with other people. You have to be aware of your muzzle at all times. It needs to be pointed at the impact berm or when you follow the target down at a 45-degree angle. Never sweep to your left, to your right, bend over to pick up anything on the range. You have to be aware of this muzzle at all times. Never point the gun at something you aren't willing to destroy. This applies to any time that you handle a firearm, whether you're at a firing range, at home cleaning your weapon, or doing dry firing exercises. Never point a gun at something that you aren't willing to destroy. Identify your target and what is beyond. Anytime you set your target up at a firing range, you should make sure that the bullets pass through the cardboard or paper and impact into a man-made backstop. Now let's talk about legitimate self-defense situations. If you're carrying your firearm for self-defense and you draw that firearm, you have to make sure that you strike only your intended target and nothing else. Identify your target and what is beyond. Now let's talk about some range commands. Today at Boondocks, you'll hear "make ready holster." Make ready holster, eyes, ears. That's the first thing that you do when you hear that command. Take your index fingers, touch your glasses, take your thumbs, touch your headphones. This is to ensure that everyone has their safety gear on before any shots are fired.
Cease fire! Cease fire!
Cease fire! Cease fire! Let's talk about the ceasefire command at Boondocks. Anyone, whether they're an instructor or a student, observing an unsafe condition at Boondocks can call for ceasefire. Now let's talk about what you do when you hear the ceasefire command. The first thing that you do is obviously stop shooting, take your finger outside the trigger guard, lower the gun to a 45-degree angle, and repeat the command loudly. We have headphones on, there's a lot of gunfire, and it's important that you pass that command along and that the shooting stop. Now let's talk about what you don't do. Never turn and look in the direction that you hear the ceasefire command. What can happen when you turn is you could sweep the person next to you. So always keep that gun pointed downrange, and remember, do the right thing when you hear ceasefire.
Fight! Work your way back to the holster. Is the line safe? The line is safe. Recover your gear.
In the exercise you just saw, it was a single to the body. Now, you heard several things. One, fight. We know what that means. Draw and engage your target. At that point, after my scan, the instructor will urge you to work your way back to the holster. You'll also hear, "Is the line safe?" The line is safe, recover your gear. When you hear, "Is the line safe?" that's the instructors talking back and forth to one another, making sure that each student work their way back to the holster and there are no guns out on the range. Next, you hear, "The line is safe." That verifies to the instructors that there are no guns out, they're all holstered, and then you heard, "Recover your gear." At that point, you can bend down and retrieve the magazine or any other gear that you dropped. Let's talk about dropping your firearm while on the range. It's human nature that if you start to drop something, to catch it. The problem when you do that with a firearm is that your finger inevitably can wander into the trigger guard and you could have a negligent discharge as you attempt to catch that firearm. So if you know you're about to lose control of the firearm, simply let it drop to the ground. And the reason we do that is firearms that are modern day are designed not to discharge when the firearm hits the ground. They have internal safety devices that will prevent the firing pin from coming forward and striking the primer. So remember, if you lose control of the firearm, let it hit the ground. Remember, no cell phones or cameras are allowed on the firing ranges during classes. You will be given an adequate opportunity to take a break and check your phones as needed, but they can be a safety distraction, so keep the cell phones put away. During your class, you may be part of a relay. One half of the class will be on the firing line, while the other half is back hydrating and reloading magazines. Remember, never handle your firearm off the firing line, as this is a go-home offense.
Students to the 15-yard line. Clear for the break. Unload and show clear.
So, it's time for the break. You'll come to the 15-yard line. An instructor will direct you to unload your firearm. They'll visually inspect the chamber. After the chamber has been cleared, you'll dry fire at the berm and safely holster. You'll leave your ammunition in your bag, and it's time to head to lunch. So now it's the end of the day. You'll be given the same commands that you were given at lunch to clear your firearm. Proceed to the safe table. Point your gun towards the berm, not into the parking area or driveways. Check to make sure that the gun is unloaded. Check the chamber, dry fire towards the berm, safely bag the firearm without sweeping yourself or others, and it's time to head out.